Welcome back, everybody. Another edition here of the Kronos Group Podcast. I got a great guest today. Today it is George Rivera, and George is a father first. You know right away, anybody that's a regular listener of my podcast, you understand why I have him on, because he starts with that. Founder second, and that order matters to him for a reason. After nearly three decades, he's built and scaled businesses across direct response, e-commerce, real estate, kind of everything. And like many high performers, and we all hear these stories all of the time, there was a season where he didn't make it to the game. He had some issues with his dad's final days, and business got in the way, and that moment forced him to completely think about what success actually meant to him. So out of that came the buy back time formula, and George is here today to help us talk about founders who are rich in cash and poor on time, and a way to reclaim some of that time through systems and real ownership, and maybe build the company even more so along the way. You can find his work, by the way, at buybacktimeformula.com. That's buybackformula.com. So go check that out there. We'll, of course, put the link in the show notes. In the meantime, let's find out what George is all about. George, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for joining me here on the Kronos Group Podcast.
Hey, Jerry. Excited to be here.
Fantastic. Let's start with the cliche question, because it's what everybody wants to know to get started. Before we get to the business, let's do the Oprah question. Tell us about George.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Well, like you said, I'm a father first. It's like my most proudest role in life is being a dad. It's the most fun. It's the way that I see it is, so you're getting the opportunity to train your replacement in this world. And so, yeah, it's a blast. So yeah, family first, father first guy. Been around a long time, and I realized that, you know, we can always like make more money, start new businesses, but we can never rewind a childhood. And so, just making the most of every moment with my own son, and my hope and prayer is that every man can. And I spent a season where I built myself this founder prison, and once I realized that I couldn't keep doing that, I was dedicated and determined to figure a way to be there for my family. And so that's what I'm here to do is open eyes.
Are you a Texas boy originally, or northern boy? Where are you from originally?
Yeah, originally from Puerto Rico, believe it or not. Okay. Spanish was my first language. But yeah, I was raised primarily in Texas. So you could say Texas has adopted me as its child. And we also have a home up in northern Michigan. So over the last 5-6 years, we've had like this secondary local family that we love as dear friends of ours. But yeah, primarily in Texas. And
your kids, tell me about the family. Brag on them a little bit.
Yeah, no, kids are awesome. 4 total. My wife's got 2 with a previous that I love like my own 2 daughters. And then I have a daughter with a previous, and then her and I have a son. The son is the only one out of the others that actually lives with us. The others have grown out of the house. And so, yeah, my son is 10 years old, going to be 11 next week. And yeah, I just love pouring into him. There was a time in his life when you'd ask him, 3 or 4, like, hey, draw your dad, because whatever they draw is sort of like what they're thinking, their perception, and he would draw me like a stick figure. First of all, I don't think I'm that skinny, but okay, stick figure, and then just with a computer, and I'm just like, oh, interesting. That's what my son thinks of me, and it's interesting because last year a friend came over to our house to talk some business, and just to give you kind of a hint for the transformation that occurred, he asked my friend, he said, "Does my dad even work?" And so that was kind of cool to, like, over the years, him thinking that I'm attached to a computer to, like, does he even work? So, that was a nice little thing to have happen.
One of the things that intrigued me about having you on was talking about children in general, and you just laid that out for us. I've said, for me, having a child relative to my success was the critical junction point, if it was. The 1 second, my wife is pregnant at 28 years old. I was 28. The next second, she's no longer pregnant, and I have my son. And my entire world changed the second that he was born. For me, it was more of whenever I describe it, it's always the same way I describe the way I live my life. I'm a caveman, and, I was comfortable in the cave, and the fire's going, and I can put my back against the wall, and I got the I got the door right there. Again, I got the exit and the entrance to the cave right there in front of me, and everything's safe. But somebody's got to go outside and face the tall grass and the tall trees, and hopefully you don't get eaten or hurt and knock a pterodactyl over the head and drag it back. And so for me, that was really kind of the wake up for me to go and do all of the things then that I went on to do after growing up in abject poverty, was my son being born. And so one of my messages in particular to young people, when they ask me, Jerry, how do I find success? You've done so well. You've done all of these things that you've done. I give the answer, go have children. That I wish I would have done that much younger. I wish somebody would have been telling me that much earlier to go have children. So with that kind of as a baseline, what are your thoughts on that? Go have children as advice to find success.
I love that advice for many reasons. Yeah, I think we just need to have more children because people are having less children these days. But I think, that children are a great source of happiness and a great motivator. In my case, when I had my first child, my biological child, because I had my two stepdaughters and then my own, it's like, it's not all about you anymore, and that was sort of like the kick in the pants that I needed to like take things to another level. And so, I'm with you. I'm on the same page. And, just the moment when you become a dad, you realize, hey, there are other people that depend on me. And so you got to make it happen.
Was that experience for you when your first was born? What was that like?
The moment just holding my child, I don't know, somebody must have told me this because I tell this to other people now, but I'm like, bottle up that feeling because you're going to need to tap into it over the coming years when you're upset, you're frustrated or what have you. Just remember the love that you feel for this child. Just try to pause and almost like record it if you can. And so, I can remember vividly holding my first child and just like the love and warmth that I felt. And so I try to like go back to that when, there's challenges and struggles as there's going to be in any child, father relationship. But, that's what I would do. And similarly with our son, he was obviously my second that was mine, but, we adopted him. We adopted him at birth. And, it was a very special feeling. It's like, when you're adopting, like, I know I'm going to love this child, but I wonder, is it going to feel like it's mine or is it going to take some time? And oh my gosh, it was just instant. I was like, why did I even think about that? It's the most wonderful thing. And now I feel like he adopted us. Like we're so fortunate and blessed. Like we're like, hey, we're going to do something good for this world. We're going to adopt. And hey, it felt like we're the ones that got adopted. But I just tell people, bottle that moment, that first time you hold your child, because it'll be something you're going to want to tap into over the years.
So you have children, life goes on, and how long have you been an entrepreneur?
Since I was 17 years old. So back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I think this was like 1995. I was in high school and I started a business. I started to get into like wanting to make money, be my own boss the summer that I ended my junior year and going into my senior year. So I believe that was summer of 1995. And, there wasn't much. The internet was in its infancy. We had a Prodigy account. That's how we got online. And, the stuff that we have now was just not there. So I'd have to go to magazines. And I remember this magazine called Small Business Opportunities. That's where I'd like look for ideas. Entrepreneur Magazine was also around then. And, I started in the direct response space, like old school classified ads. And even just slightly before that, I remember this guy on TV. Of course, I'm dating myself, but his name's Don Lapre. He'd be like, I'll make tons of money from my tiny one-bedroom apartment. He'd talk about putting little classified ads and like, this classified ad made me $30. And I'm like, okay, big deal. But I could put that same ad in thousands of newspapers and, 30 times 1,000 is 30,000 a week. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like the first time I learned about scaling. So I was hooked to scaling and making money and being my own boss. And so I bought the program using my mom's credit card. I ripped it open. I started applying it and of course failed miserably, but he did plant the seed of wanting to be my own boss. So I'm like, okay, this didn't work, but what else is out there? And that's when I started buying the magazines and the rest is kind of history, as they say.
What'd you ultimately go on to do?
Yeah, so a lot of things. So I first started in the supplement space through like classified ads and direct mail, and then I took that supplement company online, and I essentially did that for like 4 or 5 years, and then I veered into other things. I sold cars on eBay, information products. In the mid 2000, like 2004, 2005. Things like ebooks were really popular, and then in all kinds of categories, from dating, weddings, gardening, just all kinds of different topics. Google AdSense, which is still around now, but at that time, like, you could put up these websites and optimize for SEO, and you could get indexed like the next day. And I mean, they're the poor quality sites. This is 20 years ago, and you can really make big money targeting certain high paying keywords. So I did that. I scaled that pretty large. That was my first $1 million year in 2005. But then it like collapsed overnight, and I had gotten rid of my other businesses because I'm like, this is the gravy train. This is going to work until I'm 100 years old. We can go all in on this. Of course, had a good year out of it, but was kind of short-sighted. I should have kept my other things going. Took me about a year to sort of recover and find my footing again. And then I launched a How to Make Money from Home digital product through Google AdWords. And of course, going back to Google for my sole income wasn't good, because that lasted a couple of years, did million-ish with that. But then Google banned the whole make money from home info product business at that time. And then I was kind of looking for the next thing. Then I jumped to having my own agency. So I started helping other businesses launch their products online. And then it was through that I was sort of niched back into the supplement space, kind of going back to my beginnings. And that's kind of like where I stuck to, got back into the supplement space. And then in 2015, I started my own supplement company, another supplement company, because that other one was sort of phased out. I remember opening up a bank account. I threw $5,000 in there, tied it to an LLC, and I'm like, this thing's going to live or die based on that money in that account, but I'm not going to ever put any more money into it. And now over $200 million, I've never had to refund that company. I've never had to reinvest into it. And so that's sort of been my biggest, I'd say, success out of all of my previous activities. And that's sort of like, my whole experience with that is sort of the basis now of the buyback time formula. And so, I know I threw a lot out at you there, but wherever you want to pick it up.
And that business is still going today?
It's still going. Yeah, I sold a percentage of my ownership 2.5 years ago. So now I'm just a board member of it. But yeah, I'm still an owner of that company, and it's still going today. Some different changes and iterations and things, but yeah, the foundation is still there, and yeah, the company I founded.
I got a ton of questions. Let's go all the way back to 17 years old. I had this conversation yesterday with a guy that owns a speaker. He coaches speakers, high-end, all guys' names that you would recognize. And one of the things I said to him is, this year, in 2026, I've never thought about giving speeches. And I put it on my list of things to get done in 2026. And the mistake I made is I searched the internet. That was a problem. That was a mistake. And so by doing that, I have been inundated with ads on my Facebook feeds about coaching programs about speaking programs and how to get on stages. And I mean, it just flies at me left and right. And I can recognize it for what it is. And here I had a guy that's one of the leaders in the industry, and I asked him about that, about how do you keep your respect? How do you grow that when so much of the industry is full of charlatans trying to separate somebody from their money? I'll ask you the same question the same way, and you've done very well at it, but as we all know, that supplement industry, has this pall that hangs over the top of it because so many people have been hurt. How were you able to do it successfully? And I don't know, maybe you don't agree with that premise. As somebody from the outside, that's been my observation, and how you were able to navigate that.
Absolutely, yeah, and I do realize that there is a perception in the supplement space, so it's nice to kind of clarify. I like to say that I'm one of the ones that can sleep well at night. I'm not stealing money from grandmas or making it impossible for them to refund or cancel recurring charges. Because there's, and kind of getting into some marketing lingo speak or industry speak, but there's trial, like the trial side of supplement space, and I know people who've made gazillions, if that's even a number, tens of millions doing trial sales, but it's a whole game of managing merchant accounts, getting different signers, and then managing chargebacks. So it's almost like, how far can we go before people get upset? And so like, I don't like that game. I like it like if I stand behind my products. Like if somebody buys it and it works for them, great. If somebody buys it and they feel that it doesn't work for them, we give them their money back. Not doing that is how you get in trouble, let alone like how can you live with yourself, but that's a whole nother side story. But yeah, we seek reputable companies to do business with when it comes to the quality of our products. And and then we do what's called straight sale. So straight sale means no trial. Trial means buy this for $1.95, and then tiny fine print says we're going to rebill your credit card for $900 until eternity per month, or I'm exaggerating on the figure, but hundreds of dollars per month. And so like sometimes my mom will call me, I bought this thing and it was only a few bucks, but now they're charging me all this. And I'm like, oh no, she fell for one of those things. So yeah, it really hits home. So just even knowing that there's people that experience that would make me just like completely repels me from ever considering a business like that. So I don't know if that was the angle you were going in.
Yeah. I think the next question then is, what should guys look for to avoid then? And it sounds like those trial periods are a way that the industry uses to hook you.
Yeah, so you're just talking as the consumer, like when they're looking at supplements. Yeah, highly graphical pages with like perfect people on the front usually is an indicator that it's just like a stock photo and there's not a whole lot of substance behind it. Any supplement that you could buy for like say under $10 and they're calling it a trial, probably a product you could steer clear from. And these days they'll claim that they put it in the fine print, and maybe they do, but hey, since with AI, everybody or not everybody, but a lot of people learning how to use it. Hey, take the fine print, throw it in AI, and just say, hey, tell me what am I missing here? Because it says this is what the promise of it says, and you'll probably get some feedback that says, oh, watch out because they're gonna take your card, and they say unless you cancel, and you got to cancel, this early, and if not, no refunds, and which is ridiculous. The merchant banks will shut them down quickly for those tactics, but some of these guys that do super high level, they've got people who they pay to be what's called a signer for these merchant accounts. So like the name of the game for them is like we just burn them, and eventually they just keep signing new people to retake that processing that they're getting burned from. So it's just it's just a dirty game that I can proudly say now in my 31st year I have never done supplement trial, and I never plan to.
Were you a user of the products? Was there a reason you got into supplements multiple times, or was it just it just seemed like a good business? Or are you health conscious? Give me an idea of how you got into the supplement space.
So in the mid '90s, I chose the supplement space because it was in the Small Business Magazine's opportunity, I think I said it right. And at that time, the internet was just growing insane, as well as GNC was the fastest growing franchise at the time. The baby boomers were the largest segment of the population, and they were in that age of like, I want to say at that time, probably like late 40s, maybe early 40s, late 40s. They want to look and feel younger. And so anti-aging products were like growing like crazy. So anything that would help people with mobility, with vision, with heart health was doing very well. Actually, has still been doing well. I know just recently, I believe it's the millennials that overtook the baby boomers as the largest segment of the population. So that's to answer that question. I would use my products, the ones that are relevant for me. Now I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm not quite of that age, but soon I will be, and soon I might need some of those. But I would just use the ones that are relevant for me, like like heart health benefit products. Antibacterial products. We have one that helps grow richer hair and nails. Use that. And I do have a passion for health. Not a doctor. I actually went to college to become a doctor. Then later in my college career, I changed to marketing. But so all that said, even though I desired to be a doctor, I'm not qualified to give medical advice. So. Yeah, that's that's a little bit on me, but I also I have this passion for like anti-cancer strategies, or lifestyle. I know there's like compliant ways to say it. My dad passed away from cancer, and actually one of the biggest names in natural alternative cancer. His name's Ty Bollinger. He was my teacher in high school. He's only a few years older than me, so now you see us together, we look like just peers. But if 5-6 years, you're like, what is it, 16, 17, and he's like early 20s, and he's our teacher. And and then later he became my CPA for a number of years, and he got too famous for me. And hey, you got to find some other help. And then he sold a gazillion books and courses about cancer. That kind of got me into it, I would say, because he sought out my help early in my marketing career. Because at the time, hardly anybody's like building their own websites. Everybody can build a website now because of the tools, but at the time it was hardly anybody. So he'd reach out to me for advice, and I got interested in health in that way. And my dad, he was a medical doctor, so the medical and then natural alternative, there's kind of a clash there. And so when my dad got diagnosed with cancer, I'm like, Dad, I know the world's #1 natural health alternative to big medicine, cancer healing, and again, got to speak it compliantly. But he's just like, well, son, I've been doing it this way for 40 years. It's kind of like, he's going down with the sinking ship. The captain's not going to abandon his ship or something like that, for lack of a better way to phrase it. I kind of going along on that. But yes, I am interested in health, and those are a few little snapshots along my life that have tied me to it.
I'm somebody that I'm probably the sickest person. I'm the healthiest sick person anybody's ever met. Been in the hospital 61 times since 2017. I've got a heart issue I was born with. I was 310 pounds 4 years ago. It changed my life. Decided to get in shape, decided to eat right. I eat an all carnivore diet. Nice. Dove into all of this stuff head first. I've been healthy most of my life till this thing I was born with popped up in my heart. But I remember, and so I'm on the outside. I was on 19 pills a day, and starting January of 22, and now I take 2 pills a day that I wish to take as opposed to I have to take. And I remember through this process, I'm on a carnivore diet, have been for 4 years. Everyone told me not to. Your heart, you're this, you're that. Now I'm, they're sending people to me to help them understand how I got so healthy when I'm so close to death so many times. And I remember kind of trying to keep my thought process on mainstream medicine and more of the holistic side that we're talking about, kind of right down the road, right down the middle, because I remember when Steve Jobs was dying of cancer, and he went and he traveled to India and Nepal and all of these other places, and he did all of those sorts of things to help deal with it. And right before he died, he said, I should have gone with the more traditional therapies. He believed then at the time that he would have lived longer had he done that. And that always stuck with me. I'm completely anti-medical institutions, anti-insurance. I think it's all more scam than it is anything, but it definitely has a place. How much place, so I guess a little bit of defense on your dad's side, how much place do you put on each one for our remedies that help us feel better and keep us healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, like you said, medicine has its place, or big medicine, industrial medicine, for like emergencies, you're in an accident, like that's where, you need somebody to like stitch you up or bring the pain levels down urgently or something like that. But I think to incorporate medicine, like big pharma into like an everyday lifestyle can be dangerous because there's tons of side effects. It's like you look at the ads that come on for drugs, and you see the family skipping in the fields while they're saying this might cause suicide and you might lose your left arm and you might never be able to see again. And it's just like, they want you to see the good stuff, but legally they have to tell you what the potential side effects are. And I'm like, I don't know that I'd want to sign up for that, but so there is a place for it. And my father, he's a critical care pulmonologist, lung doctor, and so he would treat people that smoked, and obviously smoking is not a good thing. And I don't know if there's natural things to smoking. It's never been an issue for me, so I never researched it much. But I know he served his place in the in the world for good as far as health goes, or at least helping people with issues. But I think kind of staying away from big medicine as long as you can is a good thing. And hey, if you need them, then hopefully they can help you so you can get better, and then stay away from them as long as you can again.
You talk about how Google changed the rules, YouTube changed the rules about what you could advertise on, and the things that you could do. And if you sign people up for these trial programs and then continue to charge them, somebody's going to come in and shut you down. And I'm always amazed by, they tried to put me on statins. Again, my heart is not in the best shape. No matter how healthy I am, I still have to deal with this issue. And they tried to put me on statins, and I said no. And I said no. And then when they hit me with the statins, they said, but Jerry, this is my cardiologist, said, Jerry, you got to go on this new one. And this new one is going to lower your overall chance of heart attack by 33%. And I was like, that's incredible. I got to see that study. And she said, okay. And another couple of months went by, and I hit her up again. Hey, I was looking for that study. Comes back, it's my 6th month. Now I got to go back and see her again. Hey, I never got that study. And it turns out the study she was giving me was overall the use of a statin decreased your chances of a cardiac event killing you 1%. And the new one improved that by 0.3%. And so they took the 0.3% as opposed to the 1%, and said that it increases your all-cause or your cardiac mortality by 30%, when in fact it increased it by 0.3%, because 1% was already their baseline. All the advertising was out there about that. My doctor recited it to me like she believed it, and when I pointed it out to her credit, she's like, I never looked, and I've never had anybody ask me before to go look. So they're out there advertising away that this thing is a 30% increase, less chance of dying from what ails your heart, when in reality the baseline is 1%, and it improved it 0.3%, so they could advertise an overall improvement of 30%.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they gotta reimburse themselves for their R&D or something. They're not gonna waste all that for to discard a project. At least that's what I believe. And they know how to manipulate the messaging. Maybe it was legally correct to some degree because of the nuances of the phrasing.
Right.
But it's like, legally, but also deceptive. And I guess the deceptive part is tough to I don't know, to measure, even though it kind of makes sense. Because I
think it hits on the point you were making, is just be suspect about everything. Ask questions about everything, holistically, on the supplement side, and on the big pharma side. Do your research. So you had money. We'll pivot to what you went on to do. So you had the money, the growth, the momentum. The business is doing very well. You've done now hundreds of millions of dollars over however many years. But from my research and reading about you, it looks like you still kind of, with the family side of things, felt like you were losing. So take it back to the time. Just kind of, did that hit you like a brick? Was it redundant over and over again to the point where you finally woke up to it? What was it that you figured out that your success was costing you something that you were worried looked like you're not going to get back?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I'll go back kind of in the old days again briefly here, but going back to late 80s, early 90s, I'm in middle school, high school, and I played in about 40 basketball games in that time frame, and my dad only made it to one of those games because he kind of gave his whole life to his career, and I remember I'd score a basket and then look at the empty stands and there's no dad cheering there, but my teammates, my friends would score and their dads are going crazy in the sidelines. And I remember looking at another dad loving on his kid, and I was like, I wish that was my dad. And, that would have completely crushed my dad because he was a good guy. Again, he's a medical doctor, good career, made good money, always gave us, nice homes and cars and trips to Europe. But when I needed him most, he wasn't there. And then fast forward 20-ish years from there, now 11 years ago, and that's when he got diagnosed with cancer, 2015, the beginning of the year. And there's this saying, God laughs at man's plans. He was kind of gearing up for the rest of his life because his parents had just passed away a couple years prior, my grandparents, in their mid-90s, and relatively healthy, just kind of old age. And it's like, hey, sign me up for that. And so he's kind of thinking that's my future, but he got diagnosed with cancer and ended up living another 10 months after the diagnosis. But one of the things he told me before he passed away, and I speak a lot about this, is he said, "Don't miss Leo's games. I missed too many of yours." And that hit me like a ton of bricks. First, it was like, holy cow, like he acknowledged the pain that I felt as a child. Like that's like to me, it was like beautiful closure. I didn't really know where to put that, but like that was nice that was acknowledged. And then the second part was, oh my goodness, I'm my dad all over again. I'm doing the nice houses and cars and trips to Europe thing to offset, my presence and my attention. And so I remember thinking, I didn't like that as a kid, but I'm repeating this now as a dad. This has to end. And so again, that was late 2015 when that happened. And I remember, like, I'll just start tomorrow because today I'm working 16-hour days, or 16-hour today. And then the next day comes, and many tomorrows turn into 3 years. So fast forward to 2018, and I reached my burning point summer of 2018, or my burned out point, where I was like printing money, $20 million that year, very profitable. It was me and 40 people beneath me. So I had the world's worst org chart. It's like they all reported to me, and I'm delegating down, but it's all bouncing back to me. And I'm robbing from the future by just saying, I'll just do it myself. It's quicker. And so I've kind of added to the definition of insanity, which is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So my version, or my added version, is when you pay somebody else to do a certain task and then you end up doing it for them and you do that over and over, like that's kind of insane. And I had been living insane for a number of years at that point. And so, yeah, reached the burnout point. I emailed my mentor who was out of the country at the time. I told him, I hate this business. I want out. I want to burn it down. I want to get out. I just want to be done with it, regardless of the profitability of it. And I often say, I had enough money to buy, just about anything I wanted at the time. So long that I'm not buying helicopters every day, we should be set for life. And so no helicopters purchased, thank God. But I got a response from my mentor. He was in Rome. I didn't mean to bother him. He was in Europe with his family. But he called me and I was like, oh no, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And he's like, no, I had to call you. I just couldn't wait till I was back. So this is an SOS. This is a distress call in the email that I sent. And then we talked for a couple hours. It's like midnight over there, afternoon in the States. And to sum up like a 2-hour call, he basically said, you got to stop doing what you don't like doing and keep doing what you love doing. And then what you're good at, which is like the online marketing stuff, new offers, new funnels, revenue optimization, recurring revenue, strategic relationships and all that. And not, admin, merchant accounts, customer support, payroll, techie stuff. Like, no, none of that. But all that stuff was rolling up to me. And so we implemented frameworks and basically these certain flows that got me out of that. I used to be the bottleneck and no longer. And so the pinnacle of my transformation happened 3 years later when more than doubled the business to just shy of $50 million. But now I'm living a semi-retired lifestyle. And I'm pouring into my son, into my family, my son being the main beneficiary of that with the extra attention. And like my dad said, don't miss Leo's games. I never missed any of his games. And in fact, when he said that, he also kind of meant don't miss out on his life. And so, I taught my son how to negotiate real estate at 8 years old. We were buying a house actually up here in northern Michigan. And, realtor gives you like a couple of minutes to talk amongst yourselves as a family to see if you like the house or not. And the old me would have said, son, go in the room over there. Here's an iPad. And we'll let you know when the big people are done talking and whatever. The current me, or the me then / now, is like teachable moment. So I told my son, here's the price we're going to pay for this house. Like, here's our offer. Close in 30 days. Leave the furniture. Leave that dock because all this is going to save me like 80 grand. Now go make the offer. And he's just like, what? And I was like, don't, just go. We'll debrief later. He tells the realtor. The realtor kind of looks up with a little smirk and a smile. And he's like, is this the offer? And I was like, hey, the whippersnapper said our offer. And so kind of just throwing him into the fire is a great way. And I can just imagine him doing that one day with his kids, thinking, hey, my dad took me doing this. We're going to do this with our kids. Also current day, he's 10, almost 11 here in a few days, but he's got a podcast. He's already interviewed 20 something people. These are all my friends and peers, because he's 10. He doesn't have a network. I put him in there, and it's a serious podcast, having a serious conversation. And then the last couple of questions bring out the child. And so you realize, okay, yes, I am talking to a child, but a lot of good questions leading up to it. And it's basically, the theme of it is sort of like, what would you tell yourself if you can go back and tell your 10-year-old version of yourself something? What would you say? And it gets people pouring out just gold and wisdom. And it's almost like they want to show off in a good way, like all the stuff. And because it's almost like your chance to rewind life and avoid some of these big obstacles that were part of one's journey. And so, yeah, it's just been so much fun watching him mature. And anyway, I got on a side tangent there, but all that to say is like, that's just evidence of like being available for your family. You can do things like that. You know, he's homeschooled, so we take him all over the country with us on our, real estate adventures and even just seeing, special things around the country that the old me wouldn't have had time to do. So, yeah, threw a lot out at you there, wherever you want to pick it up.
Would you have, what is your take if you were starting from scratch, the company on its first day, and you had the kids, you had him on your first day, not your whatever 10th year or whatever it was, to where the company was at scale. When you were growing that thing and the effort and the energy you had to put into it, would you have been able to make the same decision?
Yeah, that's a good question. Man, I honestly, I don't know. I'm trying to put myself back there. It really depends, and I'm just trying to think, okay, is this like the only thing I have going? Like like this needs to work for my family to eat, basically. If I was in a position like that, I would say I probably would have given my all to making that work. But knowing what I know now, I would have sooner invested in systems to get myself out of the of essentially all of the roles. Because when you're starting a business, you are everything at the beginning, and there's that season for everybody who's starting a business, unless you just have this pot of gold or this inheritance, which is not most people. And so there is a season where you got to hustle and work hard and all that. So yeah, I feel like just because I needed something to get going, I probably would have put the effort, but knowing what I know now, I could have, like, instead of, taken multiple years to like realize it, I feel like I could have done it in less than a year. And but as I'm doing it, I would have prioritized time to spend with my child. So that might mean instead of working 14 hours, maybe you're working 8 or 9, which is still a lot of hours, but you're consciously making an effort to be present there for your child. Like I make a concerted, focused effort that when he comes down and he wants to tell me something, I'm typing on the computer, and I used to sort of like, I'm still kind of typing, but I'm kind of listening, but I try to be like, okay, hands off and eyes away from the computer and give attention. So, and I still have to like remind myself, hey, let's give full attention. But he's at a different age. This is different from birth, where, typically moms carry a heavy load in that period. But yeah, I feel like I'm kind of rambling there, but it is.
No, I think you're, and that's kind of the answer that I was expecting, because the internet and social media, which for me is about 85% wrong when it comes to all things business and success. So I'm quick to jump on kind of there is no new startup where the owner isn't working in and on and around the business full time and then some, to the detriment of other things where the sacrifice and the risk doesn't take place. As the company starts to mature, let's just say gets profitable and has a little bit of cash in the bank, then you could start to make some other decisions. And I agree with you on that. But I've always taught that it's quality time, not quantity time. And part of this misnomer that there's not enough time for our family and our kid. I've been married now for 28 years. We've been together 33. I have 3 kids in their 20s, 2 in the Army. My daughter lives with us. Fantastic. I could not be happier with how they turned out. And that was with me doing the 15, 16-hour days. But the thing was, in the early days when the work had to be done, I would come home at 8 o'clock at night, and they'll remember this 80% of the time, and I would wrestle with them and put them to bed. And we always had this thing that we said at the end as I was closing the door, what are you going to be when you grow up? And they'd yell whatever I want and how you going to get there. I'm going to work hard and I'm going to be smart. And they remember that all of these years later. They remember the vacations and the trips and all that, but they'll remember that the time I spent with them in those early formative years as I was building the business was quality time. No television, no sitting on the bench, no putting them to bed at 8:30 and then me watching TV, right, or doing any of those things. I would go back to work, but I would go home 80% of the time. So I think I'm just trying to get your take on that in those early years in particular, that there are really difficult ways to get a short. My wife would bring the kids to me at dinner time, as is another thing that she would do if you have that opportunity, and we'd get their bikes out of the back and they'd ride around in my driveway at the company, those sorts of things. So there are ways in those early days to give those kids the quality time that they need, and it's not always, in fact, I think rarely is it the quantity time where you're sitting there watching television and they're playing with their trains in front of you.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's their active involvement, presently being active. And yeah, I mean, dad is so important to have in the home. And when dad's either not there or completely distracted, and proximity doesn't equal presence, or at least mentally present, it's like you're robbing from your kids. Like you got to teach your son how a man is to act. You got to teach your daughter what to look for when it's her time to look for a man one day. And so, yeah, we're kind of on display or in training mode, or however you want to say it, essentially 24/7, or at least when our children are watching us. And so the goal is to just have them, see a man that they can be proud of, and either want to emulate when it's their turn to be a man, or when it's their turn to find a man, have a man like that.
Right. Yeah. The buyback time formula then. Let's say that we're that company that now we've gotten a few years under our belt. We're making some money. We're still just pining away and hammering the hours and doing all of that. What's the first thing when you come up to one of these founders and you see what the business is doing with your method? What's the first thing you do? You see that they're buried. What's the first system or kind of the shift that usually frees up time real quick?
Yeah, so we have to do a time audit, and the term audit is never fun, but we have to see what it is that where your time is going, because if we don't know where it's going, then it's like we're kind of shooting in the dark. There's some rough things you can estimate, but we just need to get a clear picture of, say, your last 2 weeks. And had you told me this 10 years ago, I'd be like, I have no idea. Okay, start now. Let's start now measuring the next 2 weeks. And in the next 2 or 3 days, you'll identify things that repeat. But 2 weeks gives us enough of a sample size that, all right, this is probably how your work life goes. And I mean write everything down, like brush my teeth, went to the bathroom, made dinner, scrolled the internet, did work. Because when you start thinking, should I put it down? Should I not? It's going to create confusion, and it's going to make the process difficult. Act as if you've got a camera on you 24/7, essentially, to document what you do, and you'll realize, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm spending a lot of time, scrolling or whatever it is that we do, or preparing food that didn't have to take 2 hours, for example. But you'll identify in the first few days certain things that essentially are becoming habits and patterns. And then what I do is establish a dollar per hour value for the client or for the reader. And for example, in my case, my time was worth at least $1,000 an hour, upwards of $10,000 an hour. Kind of in my prime focused high revenue activities. And so I realized when I did this for myself, there were some weeks I was working anywhere from 60 to 80, sometimes as high as 90-hour weeks. And so when I did this for myself, I realized that there was 40 hours that I was not wasting, but things I shouldn't have been doing, that I could have paid somebody else at least $50 or less. Those were the value of those tasks. And so I'm not really good at math, but just taking, $50 an hour times 40 hours equals $2,000. And so during those days when I had my little money printer, I could have easily afforded $2,000 per week to buy back more than half of my week, which would have been an incredible amount of stress, an incredible amount of my brain power I could have saved by doing that. So the 20 or 30 hours that I had working on my quote zone of genius, where it's, coming up with new offers, new marketing techniques, sales copy, strategic relationships, things that move the needle for the business. I'm now working that time at max capacity because that's all I'm doing, instead of like doing all this other stuff and then I'm getting to the stuff if I'm even like still like able to perform to any degree. So that's the first thing, is get clear on what you're doing, put a dollar value on the things that put a dollar value on you, and then figure out the dollar value of the things that you're doing, get those things off of your plate. And then you realize, okay, what can I eliminate, what can I automate, and what can I delegate? Those are the three things you could do with any task that you should not be doing. And you eliminate things that really don't move the needle, that don't matter. You automate things that repeat, and then you delegate things, but you transfer ownership. Had you talked to me 10 years ago with the world's worst org chart, and I'm delegating down and it's bouncing back up to me, I'd say, hey, I'm delegating and it doesn't work. Well, I was delegating wrong. You got to delegate by transferring ownership, and you need to show them what finished looks like and let them be responsible for even improving it, assuming you hire the right person, and there's a process to do that too. But yeah, so those would be the first steps, I would say, that we start to buy back time. And once we buy back time, there's another element of giving that time to your family. But we're focused on the removing you from the bottleneck side of things.
It's so interesting how that advice and that approach is in so many parts of life. Again, going back to my first part there about the startups and how you have to put your time in the startup. There's no way around it, but quality time over quantity time. And I've said to new startup founders, I said, I want you to write down on a piece of paper what your day looks like. But it's interesting, 4 years ago, I was 310 pounds. I lost 100 plus pounds in 8.5 months. I've never been in better shape now. And so as I've worked with people through my social media, they see what I've done. It's not a business or anything. I'm just happy to help. And I give them some advice. The thing I always get back is, well, I don't have time to, Jerry, you're in the gym 2 hours a day. I don't have time. And I was like, I have kids. Your kids are grown. I have little kids. And I was like, oh, let's get a yellow pad out. let's write it down, and let's see what your day looks like. Okay, we'll give you 7 hours for sleep, minus out the rest of it. And now what are you doing with your other 17 hours? And when they do that, it always shows there's time for X, the kids. Mm-hmm. There's time for the gym, right? We always have more time. It's weird how the human brain seems to work that way in almost every scenario, and probably even more so because there's so much on the line when you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they say I don't have time, I sincerely believe them. But it's when you do this audit, it's like you have a mirror looking back at you, and it's like, oh yeah, you do. You're just using it wrong, and you're not prioritizing. And so yeah, it's interesting when you have them do this exercise, their eyes open, and yeah, then it's like, okay, I found the time now.
How do you get? I think one thought on that. I think it's like everyone's business. I say to every business owner, I will find 5 points at least in your business that you're not seeing of margin that you don't have access to. And throughout my career, that's been mostly true. Sometimes as much as 10%, because when you're in the hole digging out, it's hard to see, what it is that you're looking at. Conversely, I tell other people who do the same things that I do, that I bet if you came into my business, as hard as I look for it, you're going to find 5 points of margin that I'm missing in there the same way. And so I would say to most business owners, there are always better ways of doing things. You said you believe them, and I believe they believe it also. But the reality is to almost any business owner, and the message I want them to hear, well, I want to get your feedback, but this is from my experience, having dealt with thousands of them over the years, is that there's always ways to improve. And if you think there isn't, you're the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you think, okay, my way reigns supreme, then that's probably when you're doing something wrong. Because I think we always need to have an attitude of hey, we can improve, we can get better. Very rare is there ever going to be one person who's like, this, I've reached the pinnacle of everything. I mean, I guess there has to be a pinnacle to everything, but it's very unlikely that it's going to be any one of us at any given point. So I think just being open to, hey, my way might work for me right now, but there could be a better way to do this. And so I think when you close yourself off to that, it's when you're missing opportunities. Kind of like when we talked about earlier, like when you're asking questions of, say, medical professionals, and they're just saying, nope, that's the way it is. that's you kind of like, no, okay, yeah, you're probably not very open-minded to many things.
Right. I'm a fix today what I fixed yesterday if it needs it, and fix tomorrow what I fixed today, and don't get too emotional about it.
Yeah.
You need to have your eyes opening, looking at things. In fact, this reminds me, at the most money I was making, hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Business was going really, really well. I had climbed, at 17 years old, I was living on the street. Now I'm this millionaire, and I've done all these things, and business have done hundreds of millions of dollars. And I thought I could do no good. And I hired people, or I belonged to a group, a peer-to-peer group, to help me manage all of this. And even then, being told by them I shouldn't have done this acquisition that I did this acquisition. And not only did the acquisition take me 5 years to get out of and cost me about $6 million, but at the same time I was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Going back on audit, I was costing myself $60,000 to $70,000 a month. I was so sure I was doing well, right, that I was missing how much money I was making because I knew I was right.
Yeah. No, that's, the entrepreneur, been there, done that. It just means, we're all part of that same club. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important for people to hear that also, that we are not, everyone is fallible. The most successful among us have made, again, I always say I've lost fortunes and I've made fortunes. And if I had listened, I've listened to enough advice that I could have lost more fortunes, but I didn't listen to enough advice that stopped me from losing the ones that I did.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I look back at all the losses, and of course you just got to learn from them. Those are just, it's almost like you're paying for your education by doing that. I guess otherwise it's not a very pleasant experience to keep dwelling over, as long as you learn from that. I look back and I'm like, I wish I would have just put all of that money that I just that blew in these investments, which is multiple millions. I wish I just would have put it in the S&P and call it a day and just hung out with my family the whole time.
Right.
But we can't do that. But it's nice to dream.
I'm right there with you. I agree with that. I agree with that statement 1,000%, particularly as we sit here today with the stock market in the shape that it's in. I'm 57, so I'm some years, a decade older than you. So 100% I'm with you on that. For founders, so I got to imagine you walk in and you're working with a founder, this has got to scare the hell out of them, because so many founders believe that everything's going to fall apart. In some cases, I'm going to rephrase this question. There is some truth that if founders step away, the thing's going to go to hell, or things are definitely going to run worse in the short term. They certainly can be fixed in the long term, but without a doubt, for a myriad of reasons, the founder is going to be legitimate in his concern about what the business is going to do with him in it. So how do you get him out of the way and get him thinking the right way, to understand that you've got the experience, you've done it before, you've experienced it yourself, you've worked with others to get him to do it. What's the magic formula to get him to jump on board?
Yeah, absolutely. And I first relate to them because I also built myself a founder prison that, had I walked away from by doing nothing, would have collapsed, because we build the business to revolve around us needing to be the firefighter. And it's like part of our identity is like we hustle, we work, and we get this kick, or I don't know if it's just this dopamine hit or something, out of putting fires out, even if we say we don't like it, but we feel like we need to be needed by our company. I don't know. Interesting thing to think about there. But it takes frameworks and systems to work yourself out, and there's a process that's repeatable, and it works every single time. And in fact, when I stepped out from being the bottleneck to essentially almost like semi-retired, I more than doubled my business, because the little then I did work, I was able to work on those higher revenue generating activities. So I tell the founder, it doesn't happen overnight, because you've built this for yourself to be needed, independent in your business. But in order for you to get your sanity back, and that usually means, when I'm talking to people, they might be okay with the hustle. Yeah, you stress about it, you complain, but you get up and you keep doing it. So maybe you're okay doing that, but you're feeling it on your family side. Maybe you come home and your house is a little quiet and you think, oh, wow, it's nice and peaceful. But in reality, it's like your family kind of resents you because you're just never around, or you're never paying attention. And you've trained them that when they talk to you, they don't really get your full attention. So it's almost like, well, let me not even bother. And so I've talked to a number of men like that. Or sometimes women are just flat out like saying, hey, I'm not taking it anymore. Something needs to change, because we've heard that whole, yes, I'll do it, and it never happens. And so you need to restore that bond with your family. So we need to get you out from being busy at work, putting in systems. So, it's not like you're just irresponsibly walking away and the thing's going to collapse. There's a process to doing that. And so yeah, usually the founder, there's, aside from the pressure of the business itself, they're feeling pressure at home, and it takes the desire to want to plug back into home in order to really see it through, at least in my experience. I mean, when you buy back time, you can put that time to anything you want, but usually there's some home pressure kind of pushing them to see that and realize that.
We are talking to George Rivera. He is the founder of Buyback Time Formula, buybacktimeformula.com. Go check that out there. As you all can see, he definitely has the experience. So in the last few minutes that we have left here, George, I want to do a little quick speed round with you. I like to do these at the end. So these are quick answers. No overthinking. Just give me some quick answers here at the end of the podcast, and let's see what you do. I may interrupt you, and we may have to have a short conversation if I really like the answer. But number one, the biggest lie founders tell themselves about time.
That I don't have enough of it.
Perfect. Yep. Pretty self-explanatory on that one. One task founders should stop doing immediately.
Anything worth their dollar value that they assign for themselves.
$50 versus $1,000 an hour, right?
Exactly.
The clearest sign of business is too dependent on the owner.
That you can't step away for 2 weeks, let alone an afternoon or a day.
And when you say step away, you mean phone off, gone, nobody can get a hold of you.
Yeah, like on a trip, like completely, like you don't have a number two in place to like absorb any urgent issues or anything like that.
What usually breaks, I guess this goes back to my last question that I asked you a minute ago. What usually breaks the first time something's ignored? The business, health, family, faith? We didn't even talk about faith. What breaks down first in your experience?
What breaks down? I'd say the family. Sometimes multiple things happen, and they're all kind of triggered one after another. And yeah, the faith part's important too. So yeah, I'd say in my experience, it's the family dynamic seems to be what starts to kind of the tension builds.
I agree. One boundary that every founder should set and protect and really concentrate on. One boundary.
I would say for time with your kids, and you can also apply this to date night with your wife, but yeah, time with your kids, non-negotiables. You put it on the calendar and you don't miss that. Just like you don't miss Zoom calls, you're not missing that either. No more tentative. It's in stone.
Good quality time on the schedule.
Absolutely. Yeah, prioritizing that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Last question. In your bio, you had written up about faith. And so as we go out, I wanted to ask you about that and how that has played a part in your life currently in particular, and also in what we're talking about with family and business.
Yeah, so faith is huge. I know a lot of people sort of just, kind of throw it out there, but to me, it's the most important thing in my life. I'm not perfect. I follow the one perfect one. And I just try to show people this is how I was before. This is how I am now. Not perfect, but better than I was before, and confident that I have a father that loves me. And I lost my earthly father, but I have an eternal father that loves me, and he loves you, and he loves everybody listening. And my hope and prayer is everybody gets to experience that love.
I agree with that. I love that. Everybody, as you can see, you got to give George some respect. He sounds like a man in full for sure, and he lived what he is preaching, which is the basis of the whole Kronos Group. I tell people all the time, George, that I don't have any education. I never went to high school for the most part. I never did any of those things, and yet I still did all of the things that I did. Because so I preach those things that I did, and not too much that I've read or that I saw in a video or those sorts of things. That real practical experience, having lived life. I like how you mentioned lawsuits, because that's one of the first things I tell people to look out for. What's one of the things to look out for as a business owner? I was like, just be prepared, because you're going to get sued, and probably a lot if you have any kind of success at all. So if you're a founder who's built something meaningful, guys, and you find yourself at the point this conversation rings true for you, you're saying to yourself right now, that's me. reach out to George, buybackformula.com. You can check him out there. We'll put the link in the show notes for sure. George, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, buybacktimeformula.com is the best way. All my socials are on there. You can follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn. I post daily, kind of usually a video and an article. I post my son's podcast up there. A really great way to get an insight on how I do things. And if it resonates, you can reach out to me and we can chat more.
Fantastic. I appreciate you coming on, and everybody listening. Again, success does not have to cost you your family. It doesn't have to cost you your faith. If it does, it's not worth the value, regardless of what social media and popular culture will tell you today. And George is out there making sure everybody hears it. George, I appreciate you coming on. Thanks, pal.
Thank you, Jerry. Appreciate it.